So for today, I'm just going to be playing some try-hard best of threes, trying to get back into my Vampire Coast first pick meta. And it's going to be starting off against Butcherbird using my classic Vampire Coast build. This is the one that I run most often against Empire, and it's generally pretty safe. Artillery doesn't really cause too many problems here, and it can do pretty well against rushes and more mixed types of armies. Doesn't do especially great versus actually no, I can't think of anything. It's a very safe build. So as long as I don't get compromised, as long as my guns don't get compromised, I should be good. The Scurvy Dogs will have to stay safe for sure. There's a Boris Oddbringer on a Pegasus, interestingly enough, and a Bright Wizard will be giving magic damage to the troops. They'll have to be a tiny bit careful there. But the infantry has now moved into range of my deck gunners, so I can begin focusing them down and getting in some pretty good damage. Also, there are some huntsmen too that I'll need to be a bit wary of. I'll need to make sure that they don't get too much damage onto me. Some Empire Knights taking to the flanks, not especially scary since my Sirens will be able to compromise the huntsmen if the Knights play too aggressively. And yeah, I guess the goal right now, I'm sort of moving up my zombies to engage in the front line, but I think I'm being a bit too aggressive there. I also need to remember to get my summons down as Noctilus. And with the Empire Knights now not defending the huntsmen, my Sirens can now run in and start taking them out. But will depend on whether or not I can actually kill off all these Empire Knights. They are taking a good amount of damage to start off with. Some of them even jumping in onto my bombers. We'll see how this plays out, as the Empire Knights will be able to start storming through into my lines. I have some dogs to chase them off if need be, and just based on by the looks of things, I think I should be okay. There's a bit of magic damage coming in over here, but these are just Empire Spearmen, so they're not especially scary. And for any infantry that tries to flank around, they generally take a little bit too long to actually get into position. So I'm feeling pretty confident now. The huntsmen are now compromised, and this is really one of the big reasons why Empire Knights will have a hard time going into the back line of the coast. It's just really brutal, as they can really destroy your back line. But still, I'll have to be a bit careful here. I'll need to make sure I'm actually chasing off these Empire Knights with these Scurvy Dogs. The deck gunners will need to stay alive too. And as for Boris, it looks like he's going to be getting killed off by Noctilus. But if he does come back in the late game, it could be a few problems. I'll have to keep a close eye on him and make sure that he doesn't get too out of hand. But as for the Empire Knights, they are completely routed off now. I still have 2 healthy units of Sirens, all my Scurvy Dogs, so I am very confident about the victory here. Horse is dodging the shots, so I'll retarget onto the Huntsman. And more magic damage is coming down here, so the Sirens will be taking a lot of damage from the Huntsman. I might lose one of them, but if I can get a heal up and save one, that would be huge. So I'll use Noctilus to use some summons and try to support in that way. The Sirens are pretty tanky. Really, the only thing that is the major threat for them is the only major threat for Sirens is a big charge from cavalry. Otherwise, they're pretty hard to kill off with just melee infantry. So they've been a huge pain for the Empire this game. And with just a few remaining forces, I think I am good to go. Big Burning Head does come down onto my my summoned zombie pistol mob. An understandable error, as they do last quite a while, and sometimes you will be sometimes you will think that they are the normal handgun variant, But definitely a misplay there, as now I do have my handguns online, and using them, I can burst down Boris. I'll turn all guns to focus fire on top of him. And even if he dodges as much as possible, there's not really too many other infantry targets to fire at, so I'm completely fine shooting at Boris for now. Although now that my zombies have cleared up, I do have line of sight to start shooting at these spearmen. So that's going to be the plan. Also interesting situation. I have actually run out of frontline a tiny bit, so things could get a little bit dicey here actually. If it wasn't for this very high HP unit of Sirens, I'd be a lot more worried. Since the infantry, these Flagellants specifically, are really good against the deck gunners, since they won't rout off, and you can see here they actually kill the deck gunners pretty quickly. And then after all my infantry is after all my infantry is dead, Boris could cycle charge Noctilus and kill him off. But since it looks like I'll be having the infantry advantage, I'm still feeling very comfortable here. So the Flagellants will be able to kill off my deck gunners, which is a misplay, but I've established enough of a lead where it doesn't matter if the deck gunners go down. So I am feeling completely fine, essentially just using the Scurvy Dogs to do cleanup at this point. Still have a full HP unit of Sirens, and Boris has even reached his heal cap. So all in all, I think Noctilus would probably be able to duel him at this point. These Empire Spearmen don't really bother me, since the Scurvy Dogs can charge them in the back. And they should be going down in just a moment. As for Boris, the Wraith Storm ability is really nice there. Just since it forces him to disengage from the deck gunners or take a huge amount of damage. And opting for the damage, since he's a little bit bogged down, is going to be a pretty rough time for him. But you can see that these Flagellants, despite being at very low HP, they are extremely effective against deck gunners. You really need to make sure your Scurvy Dogs are ready to kill off the Flagellants if you want to keep that backline safe. It's a very important part about this matchup, but if you can manage that, the rest is pretty straightforward. Hello, Dr. Jellyfish. Happy to have you. Woo, all right. Shirts off for Sigmar. Feels good, man. Well, I guess they don't really need armor if they're getting gunned down anyways. I think that single unit of Flagellants probably got the most value out of all the Empire infantry troops. Yeah, 1400 damage value compared to everything else. I think they won out on that. They might have even gone more than the Bright Wizard. And indeed they did. Yeah, really crazy. So that's one of the win conditions for the Empire. But sadly for the rest of the army, those Empire Knights, you gotta be really careful with them. They cannot charge this gun line, even with 4 of them. So the next game, second matchup against Butcher Bird, I've gone for a Rogue Idol build, some skirmishers, some cavalry, and the name of the game is staying mobile to make sure that I can, that I don't get caught up by the cavalry of the Beastmen. There's a few Razor Gore Herd units, and I'm going to Spirit Leech them right now, since that will actually give me a pretty nice advantage, as it does push them closer to rampaging. If I can get them to rampage into my army early, then that's going to be quite a bit of damage onto them. There's also Malagor, the Dark Omen, not Mogre, so perhaps I should have Spirit Leeched him. But I'm still pretty happy about this Razor Gore Spirit Leech. Put in a good amount of damage, and now I guess I'm just marching straight into battle. My infantry is many times stronger than the Beastmen infantry, and it's really just the cycle charging from the cavalry that I have to worry about. Rogue Idol can just charge right on in to engage onto these guys to get them to rout as quickly as possible. And I want to be pushing into the back line, into all those archers. For the cavalry fight, I can't win that especially easily, as I do have... Ooh, this is a pretty good fanatic bomb. Yeah, the cavalry fight is a little bit dicey, since my forces are pretty weak, but very mobile. So as long as I keep them away, then I should be fine. As for that fanatic bomb, that was absolutely crazy. I got a ton of damage there and routed off 2 Centaur units, which is pretty great. That is definitely a huge play, and now I'm going to use Azag to start bullying Mogr. I'm going to cycle charge with him though, since I really do not want Azag to get surrounded by the butchers of Kalkengard. And once I pull away with him, he should be nice and safe. As for this Goblin Shaman, there's a bunch of infantry clumping up, so I can use my Curse of the Bad Moon over there to hit most of the infantry. And that fight should go pretty well in my favor. And as for my right flank, it looks like Terror Routes Abound should be able to win that situation. So all in all, things are going pretty good. I'll need to remember to use my Spider Riders to actually chase off all of these routing Beastmen forces. And my Skirmishers will keep back the cavalry. I am running pretty low on infantry though. And let's see, I'm not sure how one of my units of Black Orcs actually ended up dying. But it's not too much of a problem. I still have a pretty healthy unit. I have Fanatics in 20 seconds. So I'm feeling pretty good. Although a catch with these Butchers of Kalkengard would be huge. I think Azag should be able to take off. If he doesn't take off, at the very least, he'll be able to distract the Butchers for quite some time, as he is pretty mobile himself. And there we go. Most of the Beastmen do get caught up here. I can throw down a second Fanatic Bomb onto all this infantry. It's not fully optimal, but it's still quite a bit of damage. And as for the Rogue Idol, I'll need to make sure that it doesn't get shot by archers too much. Otherwise, its armor will decrease, and it could end up in a pretty bad situation. As for Malagor, I'm going to continue Spirit Leeching him, as routing him off will be very important heading into the later stages of the game, since a kill on him is basically an instant win. All these Beastmen forces are getting pretty battered at this point, and without their leadership, they are going to take a heavy mass rout. And given how low the leadership is right now, I'm actually going to try breaking them now by sending in my Spider Rider archers, discharging them straight into the back of the Beastmen, and then sniping out their leadership. With him routed, it's going to be a huge hit onto their leadership, and we're seeing now Terror Routes Abound. That should be basically all I need to pull out the victory. Azag could go down, but given that I have so much cavalry here, I think he should be safe. And there we go, Malagor is out. The mass rout commences, and the biggest threat at this point are those Minotaurs, ROR Butchers of Kalkengard. They're a little bit hard to take down, but I still have the Rogue Idol, and it's going to be more than enough to actually kill them. Not to mention a few Fanatics, but it looks like I took a bit too much damage on my Goblins. They won't be able to throw down their Fanatics because of that. So a tiny misplay from me, but definitely not one that matters too much in this situation. Still though, Azag has taken a surprising amount of damage. I'm not sure exactly what caused that. But there we go. Fortress of Kalkengard are gone, and that's gonna be GG. Flying Talker, you're asking, are Rogue Idols good in 2v2s? Healing, you can trigger the weapon strength increase and then heal them up. Oh my gosh. Is that true? If so, that's crazy. I'd imagine that this weapon strength debuff would go away, but yeah, there we go. Game finished. The Rogue Idol, I didn't really have it in combat the whole time. I think I mismicroed it at the time. I think I mismicroed it a tiny bit. All my mobility did pretty well. The Black Orcs died pretty quickly due to Mogr's spells and summons. But everything did pretty good, especially these guys. 1900 damage value is mostly because they killed off 2 units of cavalry at the start of the game. Just an extremely efficient unit, and one of the staples for greenskins. So my next opponent is ITO's Legion, opting for a Lizardman counterpick into my coast. A little bit scary, since usually Lizardmen have a really bad matchup against coast. So the fact that Legion would walk into it means that he has something ready. And in this case, that something looks like a mass infantry rush. So to deal with this, the idea is that I move up my infantry line, and they're going to be blocking as many units as they can. If Legion tries to slip in a few units of Saurus warriors, he's going to be having a pretty bad time, as these gaps are essentially just kill zones, and he'll be taking a ton of damage trying to break through there for sure. The bombers are in position. I'll move my caster up, and then she's going to throw down a summon to start shooting the Saurus warriors in the back. Skinks will take a ton of damage from bombs, and there are a few Kroxigors over here, so I'm just going to focus them down and hopefully start killing them off. Any Skinks can be easily routed by Luther plus the bombers, and an infantry flank is on the way. We'll see how well that actually does in this situation. The Saurus Scar Veteran too, diving in towards my caster, would be a bit scary, but I do have all of my guns here to support, and Luther to come in and kill him off. So he is absolutely not scary in the slightest. He'll be going down in just a second, and then I can turn my guns to snipe off these Kroxigors now. Some Skinks do manage to slip into the back line though. The question is, will they be able to make it? I do have Sirens at the ready to support that situation, and a gap has appeared in my lines, but like I said, it is essentially a kill zone over here. So even though there are a few gaps, they're going to be having a bit of a rough time. The Kroxigors are now gone, so they are no longer a threat, and I can shoot onto the sides of the infantry here to take them out. So that's going to be the plan. I still have some scurvy dogs to kill off all these Skinks too. And then the next pit stop is going to be this Slon. If I can snipe out the Lord of the Lizardmen, that's going to be a huge leadership debuff, and that'll go pretty well for me. But still, my backline is getting compromised a tiny bit. So the plan right now is going to be sniping out the Lord as quickly as I can. I've dealt with most of the infantry. Luther has landed to avoid most of the damage from the Tempest, and now he can go ahead and start killing off the Slon. The Sirens are healed up and at very high HP. The Slon has basically no support at the ready, at least at the moment, so I can pretty easily get a ton of damage onto him. Saurus Scar Veteran coming in to try and support, but will he be able to make it there fast enough? A few of my handguns do get compromised too, but all in all, things are pretty well in my advantage so far. I'll need to escape with Luther though, since I definitely don't want him to die to a Scar Veteran. And I'll need to make sure my scurvy dogs are a little bit more active. I've been a tiny bit slow with them, and they could have been doing a bit more damage here. Saurus Scar Veteran is chasing down Luther too. Hopefully I'll be able to escape with him. And as for all the infantry that has slipped into my backline, it looks like they will be getting routed off in just a second. These returning troops are going to get picked off by dogs, so I don't need to fire at them anymore. And I can turn my guns to focus on the rest of the Lizardman infantry. That way, I'll be able to get them all routed off, and I should be good to go. Sirens, it's very important that you spam healing on them. You want them to be as healthy as possible in these late game situations, since your opponent usually won't have a ton of magic damage to actually kill them off. Of course there's a Slon, but that's not a crazy amount of magic damage, as he is just a caster lord, so even though he's stuck in the fight against Sirens, it's not too much of a problem. And there we go. That's most of the Lizardmen forces now routed off. I can turn guns to focus fire the Scar Veteran. I can increase the cooldowns on this Slon, debuff him, and likely take him out now. There is even less now to defend against the charge from Luther. And with that, that is going to be a pretty solid victory, I think. Nothing too scary. I still have my deck gunners, I still have my handguns, but the game was a little bit closer than you might initially expect, since my backline did actually end up getting compromised. The only problem is that just the leadership of the Lizardmen got shredded a little bit too quickly. You would expect this rush build too to work against the Vampire Coast, but I've said before, I'm pretty sure rushes are quite ineffective versus Vampire Coast. Just their, I don't know, something about their gun lines are just really effective. Not to mention I'm really practiced against rush builds like this, so that also plays a factor too. Alright, so second game against Legion. Vampire counts against the Undead. There are some Boshopti here. In the side, they're going to be firing at my Vargul, who can pretty easily dodge. And as long as I keep up my dodging, then I'll be able to negate most of the damage here. The Dragon Lord and the Vargulf are going to be splitting up, so that if the Boshopti decide to turn and fire on them, I'll have a... it'll be pretty clear what they're actually shooting at. Now the Mortis engine now getting a few shots into it. Gonna have to dodge 2. And it does actually take a few hits, just due to some miss micros, but not too much damage. It should be healing that up in no time. A few more shots do ring in though, taking a few more hits, but my White Kings are fast approaching. And Scab Scrath number 1 on the Skeleton Spearman. Ooh, a nice dodge from Legion, predicting the Scab Scrath as I approach. And now it's going to be the big engage. I'm going to go ahead and summon some zombies onto the Boshopti. The, let's see here, my carts and so on will need to get into position, and the Vargulf wants to be diving in onto those Ushopti. Scab Scraths are going to have to wait for better positioning. And for my Lord, hopefully he can get some pretty nice breath attacks onto all these Ushopti. The Vargulf will be pulling away to distract these Necropolis Knights, and we'll see how long it takes this front line to go down. My Claw of Nagash is actually taking a bit of damage, so I'll have to be pretty careful there. As for the Ushopti, I'll be able to charge some of them along the sides, I think, since the Necropolis Knights are a bit out of position. And if I can micro this Claw of Nagash properly, then I think I should be okay. Now the Scab Scrath to come down on the infantry should get quite a bit of damage there. My Lord is going to be pulling away from these Necropolis Knights, as we definitely don't want to be taking that fight. Claw of Nagash will be hitting up the Skeleton Spearmen, and as for Cetra, let's see if I can actually get a sniping attempt on him. It looks like I should be able to get some pretty nice damage. We'll hit him up with all of the debuffs, and then charge right in on top of him. Moving in my infantry to shut down the Ushopti still, and hopefully they go down. My Lord does get caught up though in the Necropolis Knights and all their mass. So that's a little bit scary, but I think I should be able to escape, and indeed he will. As for the Claw of Nagash, I'll continue bouncing around with it and keeping it alive as best as I can. Breath attacks too on all this infantry will be absolutely massive. But first of all, Cetra gets in a pretty precarious position, and I'll be able to hit him up with my Lord once again, getting in some pretty nice damage. As for the Vargul, it's going to be pulling around to, I guess, kill off this Necrotech, as that will work out pretty well, I think. If he can kill off the Necrotech, that will shut down any healing that the Ushopti can get. And so far, the Vargulf is in a fairly safe position. It doesn't have to worry about that too much. The more Scab Scraths, just to clear out infantry. Very important that I'm using that as quickly as I can. And as for the Claw of Nagash, I'll still have to dodge with that as much as possible. It's actually surprisingly speedy, so it's not too hard to keep it mobile, but it looks like it's about to go down. That's a bit unfortunate, but it still got some pretty nice value while it was still on the field. As for the Ushopti, the Vargulf is looking to be in a pretty good position to shut them down. My Lord, getting constantly chased by the Necropolis Knights, does buy space for my Vargulfs to do their thing. And the Claw of Nagash too. Let's see. It will be able to hit up the skeletons a tiny bit before it finally gets finished off. At least hopefully. Vargulf will be continuing to chase off the Ushopti, and my Lord hopefully will be able to make it away from all these Necropolis Knights, but you can see Legion is intentionally microing them to block my pathing, so I'll have to use a zombie summon to escape with them. That's pretty rough, but it's not too terrible, as I have been able to distract all these Necropolis Knights for a while now, and we'll see if my Lord is able to escape here. He's actually getting bogged down pretty hard by the Necropolis Knights. Some good micro from Legion. Will he be able to escape? The micro is very important here, and if my Lord dies, that is definitely a huge loss. I'll bring in some infantry to provide support, and then continue to run with him. The Vargulf can go ahead and snipe out Cetra, and let's see, it looks like I am getting bogged down pretty heavily. I'll throw down another summon to try and save my Lord. I'll use another Scab Scrath onto these skeleton spears, and then let's see if he can pull out. I'm trying desperately to get him out into a safer position, but the Necropolis Knights are providing a lot of mass. Legion has done a very good job pinning down my Lord, and I'll see if an attack animation can actually pull him out of there. The Ushopti are going down. Cetra has taken a lot of damage, but losing my Lord, definitely not a great position. He'll be able to stick in the fight for a while though, so not all hope is lost, but that's definitely a huge lead for Legion. Let's see here. I'll throw down another unit of zombie summons. Hopefully he'll be able to survive. I've secured a pretty nice infantry advantage in terms of the depth guard, which I still have a ton of. And let's see. Looks like those Necropolis Knights are probably going to kill off my Lord. That is very unfortunate. But still, let's see. This Necrotect is nearly down. My Lord has traded out fairly well into the Necropolis Knights too, and I still have a Vargulf. So even though he's been fully surrounded, I've actually still done fairly decently in this fight. And if he can kill off these Necropolis Knights, then that would actually be pretty huge. It looks like he might even have an avenue to escape, but nope, he is very much pinned down by all those guys. So he'll just have to stick in the fight and do as best as he can. And hopefully I get enough value just trading out my Lord, where I'm still able to win the game after all of that. Like, I still have my Corpse Cart, I still have 2 White Kings with Scab Scrath, so I think I should be fine. A big Scab Scrath 2 on all this infantry gets a lot of damage in. Legion's micro has been on point. He does manage to keep all of... he's dodged 2 Scab Scraths now, and given the speed of the spell, that is definitely no small feat. But a second one comes in, and that's going to be all of those skeletons down, which means that essentially it's my Graveguard up against the monstrous infantry of the Tomb Kings. And though monstrous infantry isn't especially scary, since my Graveguard do have just absolute tons of AP damage and are really hard to actually pin down and kill. These Necropolis Knights, though, are really fast. At 66 speed, I wouldn't have guessed that they were so mobile. But there we go. I have them bogged down in combat now. The Ushopti will run out of ammunition in time. And with that, I think I'll be able to pull out the win, despite some misplays that came down on my part. It seems like just Vampire Counts is working out as too much of a counter up against the Tomb Kings. And even sacrificing a few Ushopti units to save Cetra is going to be pretty great for me. He'll be bouncing into my infantry, but with the Vargulf, I think I'll be good to go. So yeah, essentially it's just cleanup now. I'll have to be a bit careful that I don't throw the game, as losing a few units of Graveguard too to Cetra is going to be pretty rough. So I'm going to group up all of my troops so that my infantry has a bit more mass. I want them to have mass so that so that Cetra doesn't do as much damage against them. And with the Vargulf, now here, Cetra will be taking quite a bit of damage, and he will no longer be able to cycle charge. So there we go. About good to go. The Necropolis Knights with some really nice micro. I'm really surprised how well how much micro can be put into these slow Tomb Kings units. So that definitely caught me off guard. It just seems like my build ended up working out much better here. Ooh, all right. So how's it going in chat? We got some people chilling. Hopefully I don't throw the game here, but I think this game is won, even if Legion micros perfectly here. I have 2 White Kings at basically full HP, so like there's basically nothing he can do. I'm constantly healing too because of the corpse cart, so the longer the fight goes, it only gets better for me essentially. Cetra is getting in on the fight now though, and will he be able to take out this force? Likely not. The Necropolis Knights will get chased off by the Vargulf too. It does have faster speed, so they shouldn't be able to cycle charge. At least I don't think so. But actually, you know what? Cetra does get mucked into all my infantry, so that's a pretty nice opportunity to end things here. I'll send in the Vargulf, and we'll see if I'm able to actually kill him off here. All the monstrous troops for the Tomb Kings do dive in. Some crazy AoEs from Cetra could prove pretty scary here, but I also have the 2 White Kings. So despite the crumbling infantry, I'll be pretty good. Let's see, Ushopti Great Bows trying to disengage, and all these troops of the Tomb Kings are really hard to kill. I wish I hadn't thrown away my Dragon Lord, otherwise this game would have been really one-sided. But that'll be a lesson for next time. Gotta be real careful about those Necropolis Knights. Their mass was really good, and with enough micro you can really pin down the lords. How are they still alive? I have no idea. I guess just the cycle charging is really paying off here. But there we go. I push Legion into army losses, and that's gonna be GG. Despite the best attempts at his micro, he was not able to pull through up against the vampire counts. To really tell you was that was some peak play, but in the end, the 2 White Kings still basically paid for themselves with their scab scrats. They didn't have a ton of great targets to hit, but just clearing up the infantry really helped out. The Grave Guard was an awesome choice, and I did lose the Crypt Horrors, but a little bit of dodging from the Mortis engine definitely helped too. If you take a look at the value of the Ushopti, they actually still got a lot of value. So clearly I didn't shut them down too hard there. Same with the Necropolis Knights. And of course the major misplay was throwing away my Dragon Lord. But since he was a Blood Dragon Lord, he's still pretty good even when surrounded by Necropolis Knights. I actually traded out pretty well into that, and that's what managed to pull out the victory for me. Vargulf 2 was really good also, just because it's mobile. So here we go. This next game is up against Wei for the Warhammer World Cup. A very high stakes game, and his army is going to be an archer build with some infantry and a little bit of cavalry. Cetra, the imperishable, with his physical resist to be negated by my flaming sword of ruin. If he tries to dive in onto my lines, I'll be pretty well suited to deal with him. Skeletons will lose to my silver in too. So I'm feeling pretty confident about this fight. There's only a few stealth units for the Tomb Kings, and none of them here are especially scary versus me. Cetra 2, now coming in, will he actually try diving in onto my infantry? Looks like no, he's going to be staying a little bit back, and I'll have to keep a close eye on him. Since the moment he dives in, I'll need to make sure that I'm ready to actually shut him down. The infantry too isn't really set up for a flank, it's just the cavalry, and my own cavalry should be able to win that fight fairly well. The archers are firing in onto my sea guard, and they'll be taking a bit of damage. I have to be a tiny bit careful there, but in general I think they'll be just fine. Now Cetra is diving in now. I'll throw down the net. I'll throw down the Overcast Plague of Rust. I'll give my archers some fire damage. And then let's see if I can actually kill him off. He'll be taking a ton of damage. But will it be enough? Have to see. In the meantime, I can throw down some AoEs too. And I'm giving him targets to attack, which actually do let him dodge quite a few of the shots. But he's still taking a ton of damage. And there we go. I've also cleared up a good amount of the infantry too, so my spears can advance and start shutting down these archers. Etc. 2 still has Plague of Rust for another 12 seconds. So I'm feeling very confident now. Not to mention my cavalry, as predicted, have won their fights. And soon enough, I should have a very strong cavalry advantage for myself. Or not cavalry, infantry advantage. Which will be really good up against all these stalkers. As my infantry is... what's it? Most of my infantry is anti-large. So they are very happy fighting stalkers. And there we go. The Silverin have successfully shut down the archers here. There are some Necropolis Knights that aren't too threatening, and I even have another Plague of Rust that I could throw down if I so wished. Etc. Now coming on in is going to be crumbling away. He should be down in just a second. And for these Necropolis Knights, I'm going to begin focus firing them. I'll hit them up with the Plague of Rust. I'll overcast it. And they should be gone in just a second. As for the right flank, I'm doing pretty good. My front line is holding exceptionally well. And for Cetra, how's his HP looking? He's at 200 HP. I want to finish him off. So I'm going to send a few units of archers just to finish the job. And then we'll see if I can actually take him down. I'll save my net since the Winds of Magic is fairly important. And as for Cetra, I'll throw down a net to hopefully seal his fate here. The Stalkers will be going down thanks to the armor debuff. Cetra is now netted. And will my archers be able to kill him? Once he's down, that's basically it. And even before he dies, the Tomb Kings hit army losses. And that's going to be GG. Pretty good. Pretty good. So that's Ent versus Way. High Elves. Oh, High Elves versus the Tomb Kings. Nice. Not too bad. Pretty straightforward. This is essentially how the mass archer build works. You can see the cavalry basically did not pay for themselves. I had enough infantry to hold up the flanks, and the stalkers couldn't really get too close. Same with Cetra. He had a pretty rough time. Even in an optimal situation where he was attacking to dodge arrows, he still basically got down to no HP left. And he was neutered for most of the game, essentially. My front line too was very good. They are all at extremely high HP. And this is basically the standard build I like taking versus the Tomb Kings. But here we go. For the second matchup against Wei, I have Wood Elves. And he is countering with Chaos. Gonna be a little bit of infantry. Few hounds, few horse masters, Archaon the Ever Chosen. Okay, we'll see if I can actually snipe him out. And is that it? That surely can't be it for the forces of Chaos. A few more skirmishers do reveal themselves, but I would expect a hell cannon in this army. But surprisingly enough, the front line is comprised mostly of Chaos warriors. I would not have guessed, as they are rather slow. And that puts me in a pretty great position to kite out the Chaos. I'll be cycle charging the infantry as much as I can. And yeah, essentially that. Just cycle charging in and out to save on ammunition. I'm going to, whoopsie daisies, miss micro my troops horrifically. I have them on the wrong hotkeys. Let's go ahead and fix that up real quick. And the Chaos Knights with the lances, I can focus down with my Way Watchers to punish their counter charge into my Sylvan Knights. As for the Sylvan Knights, they could take a nice heal from the branch raid, and then I'm in a pretty good position. Some dogs do dive in onto my Way Watchers, but they'll be just fine on the retreat. I have enough cavalry to support in that situation. And as for the skirmish cavalry, I'm gonna net them down and kill them off. That feels like a little bit of a risky take, since these Chaos Knights with lances could actually cause a few problems here. So yeah, I would actually rate this as a bit of a misplay, since I won't have a net for quite some time because of that. Still though, things are going very well to start off with. My cavalry has done absolutely amazingly. And I can't net Archaon too, because I use it on these skirmishers, but shutting down the skirmishers is definitely quite good up against Chaos. Burning Head does go down onto the Way Watchers. They are fairly mobile though, so I'll be able to dodge with them. And as for the spears, I do not dodge with them, just due to a little bit of mismicro, but it's a good thing that it was the spears rather than my Way Watchers. Another unit of spears actually getting caught up a tiny bit, but it looks like they managed to avoid the majority of that damage, and I'm pretty happy about that. Now, as for my continued kiting, I want to be cycle charging the infantry so that I gain as much space as possible. It slows down the advance of all of the Chaos troops because they can't really engage my army without their infantry. So slowing them down as much as possible is going to be extremely important. And then using the Way Watchers to pressure whenever the cavalry tries to support is going to be helping out a ton. Spears will screen away these Chaos Marauders, and it looks like we've already terror routed one of the Chaos units. So I'm feeling pretty great so far. This, what's he called? Waystalker is doing fairly good too, but a little bit low on ammunition. I actually want him to be sniping out Archaon. So hopefully he'll be able to do that. I'll use an arrow of Kuranos on top of him, and the next time Archaon gets close, I'm gonna hit him with my with a net. Pin him down, hopefully kill him with the Way Watchers, but the Chaos Knights with lances are actually getting pretty close. So I'm going to instead focus on dealing with them. The idea is I'll be pulling my Way Watchers through my spears to make sure that they don't take any charges from these Chaos Knights. And as long as they continue doing that, they should be in a fairly safe position. My cavalry too is at the ready for counter charges, and I still have a pretty decent amount of space behind me if needed. Now Archaon, he is in a pretty precarious situation now. He's pretty close to all my troops. He's facing away from the Way Watchers, so this is a perfect opportunity to snipe him out. I'll be just hammering him with my forces, the Way Watchers, and trying to get in as much damage as I can on top of him while he's netted down. Because if I can get him to rout off, that's going to be a huge leadership debuff for Chaos. The edge of the map, though, is very close, which is very worrying. These Chaos Knights with lances are getting pretty close to my Way Watchers, too. I routed off one of them, but there's still one at fairly high HP. So killing that one off is even more important than killing Archaon, since these Way Watchers are the key to victory. The Branch Wraith, too. I guess I'll send it over to fight Archaon, and then my cavalry is going to come in to support this fight. Some of these skirmishers, too, could pose a few problems here, but it shouldn't be too bad, since these skirmishers, they will lose to my cavalry pretty easily. And just like that, it looks like I've secured my left flank, and I can begin retreating in this direction. Thankfully, because I was about to run out of space here, so it was extremely important that I found a route to retreat into. I'll be chasing off the Chaos Knights with my cavalry, and yeah, that'll be saving a ton of ammunition on my Way Watchers. Even though there aren't a ton of Chaos troops here, it is very important that the Way Watchers do stay relatively efficient with their ammo in the early game. Otherwise, they do actually run into a few problems in the late game, just having to stay really safe with their ammunition. It's definitely not a great time. You want to have enough ammunition where you can freely fire it when important situations arise. One of which actually is Archaon, out of position again, a little bit close to my Way Watchers. A single volley should be able to do most of the damage to him, hopefully routing him off, but it looks like he does manage to tank most of that damage, and I probably should have shot the Marauder Horsemen instead. The Marauder Horsemen, they are nearly on top of my Way Watchers, so firing on them is much more important than killing off Archaon, especially since I wasn't able to kill him off. And things could get a bit dicey here, but the Chaos are so close to army losses, I think I might just win the game through that. So I'm going to heal up my cavalry and then just use the Way Watchers to pick off the remaining targets. And then there we go. It's going to be army losses, and that's going to be game. Just a pretty solid kite game up against Chaos, as is the ODM way. It got a little bit dicey towards the end of the game. There were a few parts where I think I could have microed a tiny bit better. If you look at the Way Watchers, though, they did manage to stay safe for most of the game, but my nets, for my nets, I should have netted down the Chaos Knights with Lances, since they were really the main threat. Archaon could never really get close for most of the game, and after these guys are gone, I can probably win the game with just the Sylvan Knights. But there we go, GG!